everyone. The Senate Labor Committee is called to order. Today is Thursday, February 27th, and we are starting a little bit late this morning at about 12:38. We're pushing. And we do have a quorum now, but today we have some informational hearings and some information being shared to us from DLI. So first of all, we're starting our agenda today with a presentation by the Intergovernmental Misclassification and Enforcement and Education Partnership. And we have 4 different officials here to share with us the information with that presentation. Anybody who is come on up and to the front, and welcome Commissioner Blissenbach and also the staff that's here to share with us. And we look forward to hearing the presentation. Please introduce yourself for the record and welcome.
Thank you, Chair McEwen, and members of the committee. My name is Nicole Blissenbach. I'm the Commissioner of the Minnesota Department of Labor and Industry. It is great to be here today to report out to the committee on the work of the what we call the partnership, the Misclassification and Enforcement and Education Partnership. So I am joined today by the other partnership members, and they will come up to kind of address their portions of the presentation as we get to that. But I maybe drew the short straw, and I'll be doing the most of the presenting, so you get to deal with me. But I'm happy to be here today to talk about this, and then also to watch the presentation on apprenticeship, which is also very near and dear to us at the Department of Labor and Industry. So I'm going to jump right in. So I'll start with a little bit of background information. In 2024, as most of you are well aware, because the bill was in front of this committee, there were some changes to laws that address and affect the misclassification of employees. Misclassification is when somebody who should be treated as an employee with all of the rights and responsibilities that come with that as something other than an employee. So an independent contractor, or even off the books entirely and not receiving those protections and those rights that exist. And I'm not sure if the presentation went off. Can you guys still see the presentation? I'll keep going. So in 2024, that legislation did a number of things. Most importantly today, it created the Intergovernmental Misclassification Enforcement and Education Partnership. This was a recommendation that was made by the Office of Legislative Auditor in the report that they issued on misclassification in 2024. It strengthened the independent contractor test for construction industry, which is also taken from that audit report as a recommendation. It created a private right of action for misclassified workers, again, a recommendation that came from the Office of Legislative Auditor report. Increased penalties to provide meaningful deterrence, clarified prohibited activities, established independent and successor liability for misclassification violations, and expanded stop work order authority at the Department of Labor and Industry. So the Intergovernmental Misclassification Enforcement and Education Partnership is made up of 5 entities: the Department of Commerce, the Department of Revenue, Department of Labor and Industry, the Department of Employment and Economic Development, and the Attorney General's Office. There is something special about these 5 entities that are all kind of put together in this partnership. It's that they all have a direct touch on the issue of misclassification, whether it's the failure to pay employment taxes when somebody is misclassified by an employer, the failure to pay into UI if somebody is misclassified. At the Department of Labor and Industry, we have lots of different areas. Earned sick and safe time is something that applies to employees but not to properly classified independent contractors. Wage and hour laws that impact people who are misclassified, as well as the Workers' Compensation Division, employers employers are obligated to provide workers' compensation coverage to all employees that they have. And then, so just lots of different ways that misclassification affects all of government. So really the purpose of this partnership was to create a whole of government approach to addressing this issue that has an impact on workers, on the state, as well as on law-abiding employers as they try to compete for business with people who may be cutting corners and saving costs. Oh. We will get
Thank you very much, Commissioner. And we apologize, everyone. We're working right now to try and resolve our technical issues here, but thanks.
All right. Okay, thank you, Chair McEwen. So the legislation established the partnership and also established expectations for the partnership that include coordination, collaboration, and information sharing. So in the legislation, there were very specific instructions that the partnership shall communicate to help detect and investigate misclassification, that the partnership entities may request from and provide to data that is necessary for detecting and investigating misclassification, and that they can collaborate with one another when doing that, those investigations, including joint investigations. The duties of the partnership are pretty wide-ranging, but everything from setting goals to maximizing the efforts that the entities are taking, to share information to support those efforts and investigations that they're doing, develop process and procedure to make sure that people have the information necessary to contact the relevant partner entities for information on misclassification and potential remedies, to identify best practices in the investigations we do, to identify resources that are necessary to better address the issue, to educate and inform stakeholders on all of those rights and responsibilities. One thing we often hear is that employers, it can be complicated, and that they need information from government on how to properly identify when somebody is an employee and when they're not. So to really coordinate and provide that education to stakeholders on rights and responsibilities. To serve as a unified point of contact for workers, for businesses and the public, to inform the public on enforcement actions taken. We know that one part of education is making sure people realize what is happening and why it's important to comply with the laws that we have. And then, of course, any other duties that are necessary that can help address the issue of misclassification. So the partnership has done quite a bit of work in the time since it became effective on July 1. It's met as a partnership a number of times, but also established work groups to really work on 4 different areas that were identified as primary areas of interest. So the partnership established 4 work groups, one specifically tied to investigation and enforcement. And the goal of that work group is to really identify those best practices, make sure that we're doing work in a coordinated effort, that we're not duplicating efforts. So we do things like deconfliction to make sure that we're, not more than one of us is doing the work that that needs to be done. So we're not wasting the limited resources we have in this area. But really to collaborate and use the knowledge and expertise of each other to make our investigation and enforcement more meaningful. We also have an education and outreach work group, and it's in the title, but their focus is to really make sure that there is a coordinated effort on the information that needs to be shared as for employers who want to follow the law, to make sure that they have that information, for employees who may be being impacted by misclassification, that all of this is done in a plain language way to make sure that people are aware of and can follow the law and can realize their rights. We also have a data sharing work group, and that work group I'm afraid to talk. Okay, we're okay.
Sorry, just a second. You want to?
Should I go again?
Yeah, go ahead, as long as we don't get the reverb.
Okay.
Please proceed. Sorry about that. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, Chair McEwen. The data sharing work group is really just focused on making sure that we have data sharing agreements in place between all of the partnership entities so that that data can be provided as needed. And then the final group, the data collection, reporting, and analytics group, is really there to look at this in a way that we can better report out on the work that the entities are doing and the impact misclassification is having. So it's really focused on setting goals and making sure that we can then report out on how we're meeting those goals and have metrics to determine how we're doing the work that we've been assigned to do. So why are we here today? In the legislation, the law required the partnership to come back and make a presentation to members of both the labor committees in the House and the Senate by March 1. So as you can tell, we're coming in under the wire. We've got 2 days left, but we're here and we've met our deadline. And we were specifically directed in that legislation to report on all of the bullet points that are on the slide, to talk about where we're seeing violations, how those are impacting people, what the staffing recommendations to make sure we're able to continue carrying out these duties, cross-referral systems, training needs, plans for monitoring and assessing violations that the partnership has identified, and the adequacy and effectiveness of the partnership's duties related to misclassification. So to meet those stated goals in this presentation, we have been doing the work, but also pulling together relevant information as to the industries and impacts of misclassification. Because the partnership has only been in effect since July 1, much of the next couple slides are really going to be focused on work estimating the impact of the problem and in what industries that is showing up through external sources. So this first slide you'll see is a summary of a study that was done by the Economic Policy Institute in 2023 called the Economic Costs of Worker Misclassification. And what you'll see here is that they really came to the conclusion that misclassification creates economic costs and deprives workers of labor protections. Many of the commonly misclassified occupations include all of those that are listed, and that cost to workers is estimated to be as low as $4,558 to as high as $18,000 per year, depending on wages and model assumptions used. There are also significant costs to social insurance programs, or those safety net programs, and that could be $585 to $3,000 per year. That's based on one employee, one misclassified employee. Another report that was done by the North Star Policy Action to talk specifically about misclassification in Minnesota. So in that study, they estimated that in 2019, there were approximately 316,000 people misclassified, and that's about 9.4% of the private sector workforce in Minnesota. And that workers lost an estimated 2.9 to 6.2 billion in compensation. Wages, paid leave, health insurance, retirement benefits, all of that captured in that number. And that the state lost an estimated 505 million to 1.3 billion in tax revenue from all of the, in tax revenue, workers' compensation premiums, unemployment insurance contributions, and all of those types of programs. Again, you'll see many of the same industries represented in this list that was represented in the list prior. The next source of information we have here is from the Office of Legislative Auditor report that was released in 2024, where, and that report stated that the effects of worker misclassification are wide-reaching, impacting workers, employers, and the government. And the auditor did note that it is hard to give an exact rate of misclassification in Minnesota. But in that report, they did look at unemployment insurance audit information, and that was, and they made the estimate that 22% of employers subject to those audits misclassify at least one worker, and that was in 2018. The report also, again, touched on the industries where misclassification is occurring. And then the final report that we've included here, and we can send links to these reports to the committee members if you want to look more in depth at those, but is really focused on misclassification in construction. So the Midwest Economic Policy Institute estimated that construction workers misclassification in Minnesota, they did that by comparing construction employment statistics and payroll data. And they estimated that 23% of construction workers in Minnesota were misclassified as independent contractors or paid in cash or not reported. And it's just a little bit on how that affects average earnings as compared to somebody who is properly classified as an employee, and the cost to Minnesota in the lost dollars. So moving on to a little bit more of an in-depth dive of the work of the partnership. So in the legislation, we were directed to make sure that all of the entity websites were updated to include the information of the other partnership entities. We at the Department of Labor and Industry created a web page specific for the partnership and included all of the contact information for the partnership entities on that, with information about misclassification as well. So that has been updated. We've also done a lot in the area of outreach and education. As you can see on the chart located on this slide, we reached many different stakeholders through many different types of events, and were able to directly engage with over 11,000 individuals. This is everything from in-person presentations, online presentations, seminars, and tabling that we've done at places where this topic was relevant. We were also asked to report out on cross-training needs and proposed plan in that area. The partnership, the first couple meetings of the partnership were really focused on making sure that the entities that were represented were well-versed in what each other did. So we did presentations about how, we at the Department of Labor and Industry handle misclassification complaints, how we handle wage and hour complaints that may involve misclassification, and the other partnership entities talked about their work as well, so that we were better trained on the inner workings of all of the work related to this topic. We know that we need to put that out further and make sure that the people who are doing the investigations and doing the audits also know when it's appropriate to maybe do a referral of a case to another entity. So we are working on cross-training with our education outreach team, but also beyond that to our internal teams. So we, as I mentioned, are also working on data sharing. The Department of Labor and Industry has existing data sharing agreements in place with the Attorney General's office. Indeed, we are working on drafting a data sharing agreement with Revenue, and that is a little bit more complex because of the data that Revenue has in its hands, but we expect that once that is in place, it will be a model for the Department of Revenue to also enter into those agreements with the other partnership entities. We have regular biweekly meetings of the enforcement group with at least one participant from each partnership entity to coordinate that information sharing, but also the enforcement efforts that are happening in the different entities. And we know that the information sharing that we have needs to be both reactive in that we've received a complaint and are working on it, but also proactive in that we know, based on some of these studies that have been done, as well as information we're receiving, that there are industries where this is more common, and we need to be able to address that in a more proactive manner. So getting to the effectiveness of efforts that the partnership has been able to address since July 1, we plan on continuing to work up an evaluation of the work that we're doing and how it is impacting the work that we all did in our own silos prior to this more coordinated effort, and also really just establishing that baseline data on the effectiveness. But we will need a little bit more time in order to do that. We've been, up and running, or like kind of working together in a more coordinated approach since July, but we can already see that it's having an impact. So setting that baseline and then developing metrics for assessing effectiveness and a timeline for ongoing monitoring is a priority for that work group. All right, so now is when we're going to kind of break out and do a report out on the effectiveness for the entities that have more to share with the committee. So I'm going to talk about labor and industry first, and then I will turn it over to the other partnership entities. But as you can see from this slide, in calendar year 2023, we received 99 total misclassification related intakes at the department. Since July 1 through January 31, so 7 months, we've already received 125. So we are seeing increases in the number of calls and complaints that we are receiving. And, we don't know exactly why this is, but we suspect that more attention is being paid to the issue. That we're doing a better job through our training of identifying it when it comes in so that we know when somebody calls and is asking about maybe wage and hour that we can go further to talk about, okay, so what is happening here and identify that as a misclassification related issue. But we've also kind of changed our approach to misclassification intakes when we get them, focusing on some of our more expedited resolution processes like wage claims, information or inform and educate letters, as well as what we typically do, the full-on investigations. But then also using the referrals when appropriate for our partnership entities. So you can go to the next slide. So we do have a misclassification-focused team now at the department, and we have cross-trained them with our education and outreach staff members. As I mentioned, we've had 26 more intakes in the past 7 months than in all of 2023. Lots of different reasons we think this could be the case. But we've also seen that the intakes are from an increased variety of industries. So everything from mental health and substance abuse, healthcare, construction, transportation, restaurants, food service. So knowing that there are many different industries that are impacted by this. So we've also, as I mentioned, put an emphasis on efficient resolution of intakes, knowing that investigations can take a lot of time, a lot of resources, especially when they are very complex and affect many employees. And potentially no records available. So we have really focused on identifying the cases that come in that can be resolved quickly and with less resources and time, and have funneled those into our wage claim and inform and educate process. So wage claim process, informally helping an employee who has maybe been misclassified and as a result lost money that they were owed through, under our wage and hour laws, process to help them informally get that in a quick process that does not involve formal findings. And then our Inform and Educate process is a letter that we send out to employers, and we expect a response. And oftentimes, it is a really great way to inform employers of their obligations and get them to comply quickly without having, again, those formal findings, and to come into compliance quickly. So we've been using that more commonly. And I think I actually covered all of this in the last slide. I jumped ahead. Yep. All right. So just wanted to cover two quick case examples. We often, when we see misclassification, it's often in conjunction with other violations. So we have a misclassification violation. We also may have a wage and hour violation as well as an earned sick and safe time violation. So in this example, we saw an employer who, right around the time earned sick and safe time came into effect, decided to change their employees from employees to independent contractors inappropriately. And to do so, to avoid having to provide those employees with earned sick and safe time as required by the law. So we reached out with an Inform and Educate letter, educated the employer that it's not a choice as whether or not somebody is an employee or an independent contractor, but rather you have to look at the legal obligations and the test. And the employer agreed to be compliant and made all the changes necessary to comply with the laws. And then finally, we had a situation where we had two transportation drivers contact the Department of Labor and Industry alleging misclassification. We opened an investigation, acquired records from the employer, and the employer immediately responded and worked with us to properly classify the employees. And then the employer in that case proactively contacted other agencies to make sure they were in compliance with the other obligations that existed as well. So we were able to get that resolved and close the file with no formal findings or enforcement action. And so these are just a number of quick examples of cases that we were able to quickly resolve just through these new efforts that we've put into place on misclassification cases. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Deed.
Welcome to the Senate Labor Committee. If you please introduce yourself for the record, and we look forward to your testimony as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members. My name is Evan Rowe. I'm Deputy Commissioner at the Department of Employment and Economic Development. And I'm here in, DEED obviously runs the unemployment insurance program for the state of Minnesota. We also, in about 10 months, we will be running the paid leave program for the state of Minnesota, both of which require there's a connection between employment and ability to access those benefits. So today, what I'm talking about is primarily enforcement efforts in the unemployment insurance program. UI is a little bit different than many programs in the sense that it is a federal-state partnership, and the United States Department of Labor establishes standards that the department must follow in order to remain in compliance with the terms of our federal grant funding, and essentially what it really does, it's for a few different reasons. Department of Labor requires all states to basically audit a set percentage of employer accounts every year, partly to make sure that there is compliance within the employer community, but also to make sure that the department is effectively administering the program overall. So, to be able to meet that effort, I would say that it's sort of more of a high volume effort where we have a team of field auditors that are working to work with employers and conduct random audits around the state. To effectively accomplish that effort, we've increased our staffing levels of full-time auditors by 5 over the past fiscal year, and we expect to add another 5 by the end of SFY25. That's all federal funding. That's not state funding because it's tied to the state's UI federal grant. Just in terms of numbers, in the last fiscal year, the team completed about just under 1,400 random audits of employers, and our objective is to meet kind of a penetration rate of about 1,500 per year. On average, one misclassified worker was found per audit, and really what this is, what's kind of enabling some of this is some changes that the USDOL has allowed states to make. Previously, we had to do all these field audits in person. DOL is now allowing states to do virtual audits, which is way more efficient, it's more convenient for the employers, and it allows us to have greater throughput. And I think the increased staffing levels will allow us to do more industry-focused audits while still kind of meeting the overall sample size and requirements that the feds have for us. Also, education is critical here. So, the unemployment insurance team has an employer services unit that does employer trainings. They conducted about 27 different seminars over the course of this current fiscal year, and I'd say about at least a dozen have had a heavy emphasis on misclassification. And in partnership with the paid leave program, which is rolling out, which is also doing a ton of employer outreach and connection, the UI has partnered with that team to do a number of different employer outreach efforts. Additionally, I would note that the employer registration, wage detail, and tax systems for the paid leave program are being built using the same kind of tool set that UI is. Most employers will have a shared account. That'll help with program integrity. That also gives us a better kind of base of records to be able to ensure compliance with the law, and it's also more convenient for those employers. So this is a nice example where doing the right thing is both easy, it makes it easier for employers, and it promotes program integrity. So that is the extent of my testimony.
Thank you. Welcome to the Senate Labor Committee. If you would also please introduce yourself for the record, and we look forward to your testimony.
Yeah, will do. Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. I'm Dan Getchell, and I'm the Director of the Individual Income Taxes and Withholding Division at the Minnesota Department of Revenue. Today, I'll be focusing on the great work we do for the state of Minnesota as it relates to worker misclassification. My team conducts audits of businesses for a variety of withholding issues. Worker misclassification just being one of those issues that we address when conducting these audits of businesses. Since 2022, we have conducted 242 audits that have led to a worker classification determination. Now, 242 might not seem like a super large number, but these businesses will vary in size. As you can imagine, large businesses, small businesses, many workers, and the different industry within that business will impact the length of the audit. I think it's really important to know also that when we're conducting these audits, we are looking at positions that are within that workforce. So one audit doesn't mean only one Minnesotan is impacted by this work. So if we make a determination on a position, that might mean 100 different people that are within that position might be impacted by the determination that we make. We are governed by the IRS common law rules, and so we are looking at the relationship between the worker and the business. We are also looking at the behavioral control as well as the financial control within that business. These audits are not easy. They do require us to reach out and learn from both the business as well as the workers to better understand that relationship so we can make the proper determination. 70% of our audits where we are making these determinations, we are identifying misclassification. And one of the most important goals of ours at the Department of Revenue is to make sure that we have future compliance moving forward with the correct classification of those workers. Because not only will that impact those workers moving forward, it will impact future people that will end up within those positions. The Department of Revenue is really excited to be working with these other agencies and look forward to any benefits that come from this partnership. And with that said, I will hand things back over to Commissioner Blissenbach.
Thank you very much. Welcome to the Senate Labor Committee. If you would also please introduce yourself for our record, and we look forward to your testimony.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, and good afternoon to members of this committee. My name is Leah Tapu. I am the wage theft manager of our wage theft division in the Minnesota Attorney General's office. As part of our role in the Attorney General's office, we enforce a number of wage theft laws, including misclassification, but not exclusive to misclassification. And I note that, again, to bring your attention to kind of the proportion of cases, complaints that we're receiving relating to misclassification, but also to reiterate how important and how much impact misclassification can have on all areas of wage theft. When an employer is misclassifying their employees, it's not just affecting their designation. It really does affect and can have an impact by denying them their minimum wage, their overtime protections that the state and that the law is intended to protect. And so I want to just reiterate kind of the scope and the compounding effect that misclassification can have on individuals and who are working. In 2024, the Attorney General's office received 696 complaints relating to wage theft in general. Of those, approximately 22%, or about 150, were relating to misclassification. Similar to what DLI has observed, there was an uptick in, for us, not only in complaints, but also the proportion of complaints that related to misclassification. So in 2023, or at least part of 2023, we received about 299 complaints, and only 20 of them were related to misclassification. I would imagine there are a number of reasons that would impact that. I think that the commissioner's thoughts on getting the word out in the education, educating of the public would have an impact. I would also anticipate or expect that, our more public litigation and cases that we have, lawsuits that we have brought, gets the attention of the public as well. But regardless of the reason, certainly we are seeing an increase in the amount of activity and complaints in this area. Again, of those 22% of complaints that we got related to misclassification, there's a wide range of industries that are impacted. Construction, gig economy, healthcare being the top three. Approximately 67% of misclassification complaints that the Attorney General's office receives are relating to those three industries, and there's a pretty big gap between those three and the rest of industries that are impacted. Now, one thing that is unique about our office and how we approach misclassification is when we do identify misclassification, if it gets to the point where the business is not willing to remedy the situation or address the situation on their own, we do have the ability to bring a lawsuit and file a lawsuit in the district court. And while that does give us a lot of additional ability in some of these cases, it also is very resource intensive. And so approximately 47% of our time for all of our investigators, all of our attorneys working in my division has gone to misclassification in 2024, and that really can be boiled down to significant work that's being done on active litigation. But in addition to active litigation, there is a significant amount of time that is put into, initially into reviewing intake, investigations, following up with workers, making sure that we have a real sense of what's happening before we bring a lawsuit. We want to make sure that if we hear a complaint about misclassification, that we are having some corroboration to that complaint before we're going forward with additional action. In the partnership and working with the partnership, we've seen an increased coordination, which is, I think, had a number of benefits, including the ability to identify frequent bad actors. What we've noticed is that a lot of the partnership members get complaints from workers relating to either the same industry or the same companies. And when we do see that, it's a pretty strong indicator that there's something going on there that one or several of us need to address. We also are able to work on establishing best practices. It's helped to identify areas in need of scope of the issue, which I think we are still assessing and trying to get our arms around of just how big of an issue this is. We've had some studies that have been done, but as I think we've seen, there has been through this education process, there have been more people who are coming forward to let us know that misclassification is occurring, and I wouldn't expect or anticipate that this continued outreach will continue to have the same trajectory of how it affects intake and complaints. So just to give you a sense of why we're doing this and how it impacts Minnesotans and workers, we recently in December settled a case that had been brought to us. It was a misclassification case relating to a Florida-based company that had been misclassifying its workers. It was a gig company, so they had workers who were working remotely, working from home, classified them as independent contractors, so they weren't entitled to minimum wage, overtime. They weren't receiving the types of rest breaks that employees would be entitled to in the state of Minnesota. Because they were, as a result of this, this action that we brought, after some negotiation, we were able to obtain a settlement that brought back $300,000 for Minnesota workers. Approximately 300 workers were affected. And again, I mentioned that because that is one of the many, many cases that are potentially out there that, you know, each of our agencies are working on. But again, I think that there is certainly a lot more than what we have been able to identify and be able to address to this point. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, back to me, Chair and members of the committee. So the last two slides are really focused on the recommendations that we as a committee or as a partnership will be working forward with. So we know that we need to continue focusing on our efforts to identify upstream proactive measures for preventing misclassification. So that will be something that we as a partnership will continue working on. We'll do so through the regular meetings that we have, both of the partnership as well as the work groups that we've established. We plan to, as the enforcement work, the coordinated enforcement work continues, to do those joint investigations. If there are opportunities to do joint news releases and demonstrate that misclassification is not a single agency issue, but rather really a whole of government problem, that we will plan to do those in the future to help deter future violations, but to really bring attention to the role that each of the partnership entities plays in misclassification enforcement. And then, you know, we know that all of our work needs to be partnered, all of our enforcement work needs to be partnered with that education outreach work. Without people understanding the issue, we will not see compliance. And so much of what laws require is voluntary compliance. We can't enforce our way out of problems. We know we need people to understand their obligations and understand their responsibilities and understand their rights. So education and outreach will always be a priority for the partnership. And then this is a preview, but I will be back, probably not too long, to talk about the governor's budget priorities. One of the things that we have in the Department of Labor and Industry proposed budget is a recommendation for additional funding for misclassification investigators. So the funding that we have in our proposal will fund an additional 2.5 FTEs focused on this area. So I already made this joke yesterday when I presented in front of the House Labor Committee, but I forgot to put a thank you slide. I apologize. Thank you. And I'm also, I know all of the partnership entities would be happy to take any questions that the committee has.
Great. Thank you very much, Commissioner. And also to Deputy Commissioner and Assistant Commissioner and the Wage Theft Division Manager also for coming today to share the work that you've been doing. This is really impressive, all of this work, and just to see also the increased participation by people, it does indicate to me that there is an increased recognition that people can perhaps get some help and assistance with issues when they're facing these issues. So I commend you all for the work that you're doing in this area. I'm going to open it up to discussions and questions. I have some of my own questions. I've been taking notes while you all have been presenting your work to us, and I do have some questions that I have as well, but I'll defer to the rest of our Labor Committee first. Senator Dornick.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Commissioner, for the report. We appreciate the work you do what a daunting task you have to get this all in and to the information to all the workers and businesses, well, the businesses. With the process that this went through was fairly quick, so thank you for the work you do. And we're all in the same mindset. We want to fix the problems, the bad actors we want to deal with. We want workers to have their due. My question is, as this daunting task, you have outreach and education. I appreciate, that's the key to try to get this out. And again, what a big task you have. Appreciate the other commissioners and their reports too. So with this outreach and education effort, you have individuals engaged, 11,300, and with that is a good start. But how do you feel it's going? And then when you have meetings, maybe where they're in person, how is it received? And as they hear some of these changes, are they feel overwhelmed, or just the response that they have as they're trying to catch up to the new law?
Commissioner.
Chair McEwen and Senator Dornick, I would say what we reported on with those numbers is how many touches on people who been to presentations. We also know that the information that we have, the websites, the fact sheets, are probably reaching even more people. So, but always an effort to make sure that we're getting to everybody who needs the assistance. But as far as training specifically for employers, the training isn't always just what the law change did last year, because much of what the Misclassification Partnership is focused on are laws that have been in effect for a very long time. There's, there wage and hour laws, tax laws, unemployment insurance responsibilities. So it's just a kind of a reinvigorated effort to make sure people understand these obligations that have always existed are still there and that people need to comply. And I think that has been met with, yes, this can be complex, but with assistance and with resources, you too can make sure that you're properly classifying employees. So I think it's been met well. I think people can sometimes be overwhelmed when they're getting information, but when you break down to the individual questions that employers have to make sure that they're properly doing this classification, I think they're appreciative of the information.
Senator Dornick.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you. Just an experience I had is I was a union carpenter for many years and got laid off in 2009, and then I started my own business and became an independent contractor and have to get licensed, and then you have continuing ed every year, so many hours you have to take. And so I went to my class just a few weeks ago, and this was the topic, and I told the teacher, I'm just coming as a student. I'm not, here for anything else. And so just because the guys didn't know who I was, and just listening to them, there's about 40 of us there. And it was a 9-point test, and now it's 14, and then it actually has subsets, and it gets a little bit complicated. So the teacher did a great job, and I was trying to just share that information, and, hey, we can do this, but it was kind of, they felt overwhelmed. And so I'm not, and it's March 1st already, and I wish it would have been delayed more to get that information out, because it's so much, but I guess we can't change that now. But just going through that process to hear their frustrations, and so we don't want to lose those guys, because those 15,000 contractors approximately are in the residential contractors, they're the home builders and remodelers, and the union guys do a lot of, most of you guys are commercial. And so just with that, I'm not sure how we can get them up to speed quicker and just make them feel that maybe as it's implemented, and I think you will be working with them and being helpful and navigating through that, as maybe sometimes they do make a mistake, that they don't come down on them too hard, because they're just trying to do their work, make a living, and most of them. Now, again, I'm not talking about the bad actors. I'm talking to the rank and file that are just trying to make a living and stuff. So I know you will, and I appreciate what you do, and thank you for your report today.
Commissioner, any response? Yeah.
Chair McEwen, Senator Dornick, thank you for that. And I chose to highlight some of the ways that we are really streamlining our process to make sure that we can spend the resources on the really complex cases where we are seeing that egregious behavior. And that is why we're using some of the more streamlined, inform and educate, quick informal action without formal findings, without the enforcement action to remedy the ones that maybe are a mistake, or maybe it isn't a full understanding, so that we can really focus our resources to get those bad actors that are causing kind of an unfair advantage and impacting all of the, especially in the construction industry, the contractors that are doing the right things. So it absolutely is a focus of ours to make sure that we are dedicating our limited resources to addressing the problematic contractors that are out there.
Thank you. Senator Umer Verbaeten.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, everyone, for testifying today. I was really proud to carry the bill that established the partnership and enjoyed working with all of you, as well as working with you on the Attorney General's task force that helped create a lot of this and inform the legislation. So I have a few questions. One is just we made some changes to the tests, and I'm curious if there's any particular things that you've found have been helpful to actually enforce the law. We heard a lot from, workers in the task force, how hard it is to try to piece together this evidence of what has happened to them. But on your end as an agency, what changes have been helpful to actually enforce misclassification?
Commissioner.
Chair McEwen and Senator Umu Verbaeten. So the changes that we made to the tests were to the construction worker independent contractor test, and that takes effect in 2 days. So I will be able to report back next time you see the partnership on how that will have an impact on our ability to go after those contractors that are not properly classifying their employees.
Senator.
Thank you. And then we heard from a number of the agencies that are part of the partnership. I was curious about the Commerce Fraud Bureau and if they've seen any intake in complaints or things that have come out of the partnership already, if someone could speak to that.
Commissioner.
Chair McEwen and Senator, I may need to call for backup. I know both Commerce and the Department of Public Services are here today and can maybe talk about that a little bit more.
Thank you for joining us. If you'd please introduce yourself again, or for the record. And, did you hear the question, or do you need it repeated?
I did, Chair.
Okay, very good.
Thank you for the question, Chair and Senator Umer Verbaeten. My name is Drew Evans. For those of you that don't know me in the committee, I'm the Superintendent of the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension. As of February 7th, the Commerce Fraud Bureau and the Financial Crimes Section at the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension combined into one unit to address a number of different things related to fraud, financial crimes, wage theft, and misclassification. And for your question, they're still in the beginning phases of working through that partnership to look through what that looks like. My understanding is they have not seen an increase in misclassification specifically, but this is on their radar, and they will continue to work together with the partnership to figure out ways when those bad actors that were identified that are purposely trying to misclassify employees are held accountable for those actions. So it's one of their priorities, Senator.
Senator, any follow-up?
Thank you. I just have one last question. Of course, this issue really is an issue of, I think, defrauding the government in addition to workers. So I think it's important to talk about how this steals wages from workers, but there's the implications as well for the money that's, stolen from the our unemployment insurance, workers' comp, just taxes in general, and that all impacts the amount of services we have. I know that Deputy Commissioner Rowe talked about how paid family medical leave is coming up soon, and we want to make sure we get a hold of this problem so that we're also not seeing an impact as that is stood up. Just curious for anyone, any of the agencies, if you want to speak to just kind of the impacts that you feel like this has on the budget, or ways that you think we could study the problem. I appreciated the study that was included, and I know we're still trying to figure that out. That's one of the recommendations, but anything that you would like the committee to know about what can we do to better study really the scale of this problem and the impact it has on our state budget.
Thank you, Commissioner, and then also any of our other testifiers who have some input, you're welcome to join us and address Senator Umer Verbeten's question.
Chair McEwen, Senator, so that is going to be one of the main focus for the work group that is focusing on data and data analytics, is trying to do a better job of quantifying the effects of misclassification. And I think it's probably appropriate to say that we're not the only state that is trying to do a better job of figuring out how much this is costing taxpayers when people are engaging in misclassification fraud. It is hard to determine that because oftentimes these individuals who are not properly being treated as employees, who are not paying into the UI system, who are not paying proper employment taxes, are doing so without any documentation at all. So we look at the studies that have been done by economists, which again, we will send the links to everybody here. We can look at the rates of misclassification that are found in audits at the Department of Revenue and DEED through the UI system, and we can make estimates, but the fact of the matter is that it is really hard to determine that, and I think that there are ways that we can focus our efforts on having a better estimate, but it's gonna take some time and a lot of conversation. I don't want to speak for everybody if other people have input on that, but it's something that we are talking about, and we know that the individual cases we are doing are important, not only for deterrence, but also to see what's actually happening, and to see how egregious the conduct can be, but also to hear from the competitors that exist that are being undercut by the savings that somebody can have by not having to carry work comp insurance, which is a significant savings, by not having to pay people overtime, by not, all things that they think they can do when they misclassify a worker.
Senator, any follow-up? Good. Okay. And I would note too, I'm very taken with the numbers that you all have presented to us today about the impact that misclassification has on workers and on our economy and on our whether or not we actually have the monies together as a people here in Minnesota to provide for one another the things that we would expect in a modern society and the things that we want to do to care for one another, whether that's education or healthcare or all of the different parts of what we do together in our state government, and to have those amounts of funds lacking is a huge problem for us when people are kind of cutting out. I have a question in particular, and this is sort of about the intersection between how violations of our misclassification laws are handled through DLI and then also through the Attorney General's office. And I'm wondering if you could just give us sort of a short understanding of how that differs. Is it just who receives the complaint and then how is it handled? Do you sometimes get a complaint and then depending on the severity of it, or if you've exhausted the means that you have for trying to remedy it, do you refer it to one another? What's that interplay there? Because we've heard, a couple different, you gave us some great examples of ways that you sort of were really collaborative and helpful in helping people understand their obligations and then helping them to correct it, kind of self-correct the situation without even official findings or an official action being taken, but just sort of off the record remedying it. And then, we've also heard the instance with the Florida Corporation and that enforcement action where there was actually a suit filed and then a settlement reached and a large amount of money than paid to workers through that settlement. So I'm just wondering, how does that look, if you could help explain that to us?
Can I start?
Sure.
So thank you, Chair McEwen, for that question, because I think it is an important question. The Attorney General's Office and the Department of Labor and Industry kind of have concurrent jurisdiction over a number of workplace regulations in the state of Minnesota. It's just the way we go about doing it is a little different. So I can talk about the Department of Labor and Industry. We related to misclassification, we have enforcement authority over wage and hour laws, which would include minimum wage, overtime, prevailing wage, child labor. We also have enforcement authority over misclassification laws. And then, so kind of a broad earn sick and safe time, broad swath of laws. The way we do our enforcement is if something comes in, either a complaint or a referral, or it's a strategic compliance initiative, we do our investigation. We, if we're not using the informal resolution process, we would then issue a compliance order. Those compliance orders can be challenged, and then when they would go to a contested case hearing proceeding at the Office of Administrative Hearings. So our process is really administrative rather than through the judicial process. So we would go through the Office of Administrative Hearings. The interesting thing is when we go to the Office of Administrative Hearings, the Attorney General's Office does represent the Department of Labor and Industry in the actions, but it's not, it's a different unit than the wage theft unit. It's the unit that represents state agencies. So that is the administrative process that we use through the Department of Labor and Industry.
Yeah, and Chair McEwen, I would reiterate what Commissioner Blissenbach said. In addition to that, I would note that we do meet regularly with each other. We discuss, we have a data sharing agreement, as was referenced before. We discuss cases that we've maybe received duplicate complaints on, so that we can determine if one of us is better well positioned to address it than another. We'll share resources. We'll talk about how the law might be impacted and what we really need to, areas, industries, companies that we need to focus on. So we have been able to, even before the partnership was in existence, start to build out that conversation and that coordination. But I think it's been enhanced since the partnership has been around, and beyond that, it has allowed us to expand it to the other agencies as well, so we can have those same conversations. I've honestly been really excited about some of the possibilities that come out of that once we are able to, I think, more in a more full-throated way be coordinated in the work that we're doing, because there are so many different pieces at play here that to not only expand the resources but the strengths, and the remedies, the types of enforcement actions that can be brought, really does give, I think, the state and Minnesotan citizens much more bang for their buck in terms of what we can do to address this problem.
And Chair McEwen, just wanted to add one more thing. There's no shortage of the work. It's great to have partners in this work, because we have to turn people away because we don't have the resources to address every complaint that comes into the department. So it's nice to be able to have additional entities focusing on and making sure we're enforcing the laws we have, and that workers are receiving the benefits they're entitled to.
Thank you very much for that. And that sort of ties in nicely to another question that I have, and that is, all of us are aware of some really severe cuts that have been made from the federal level. And I know that we had a couple of pieces of testimony today talking about audits and the connection to federal law and the federal resources that come in to the state to be able to help facilitate audits. And some of those audits have found incredible amounts of misclassification here in Minnesota. And I'm wondering if we have heard anything from the federal government in particular about any cuts or freezing of funding that might affect this enforcement piece, because without those numbers, I wonder, is there any concern about that right now, or are we just sort of in a wait and see mode? And if there's no information about that, that's fine, but I thought I would bring it up as long as you're all here so that we could hear if there was anything we should be tracking.
Chair McEwen, the work that we do in this area is not federally funded. Our federal funds go to apprenticeship, go to OSHA, and I think that's it, apprenticeship and OSHA. So I don't have anything to report back on that specific question related to misclassification.
And I would echo that for the Attorney General's office. In terms of misclassification, there's not anything that I'm aware of that's funded that's been impacted to this point.
Thank you. And is from the Department of Revenue or DEED, is there any, should we be following any of that? Thank you.
Thanks, Madam Chair. So unemployment insurance does get funded from an administrative standpoint from a federal grant. We have not had any impacts on this part of the work to date. With that being said, I think we're watching kind of the coming of the next the next continuing resolution and the next federal budget very carefully to understand what impacts there may be.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. So we are ready to move on, but just as a sort of last comment, is there anybody else? I didn't want to cut anyone off. Oh, I'm sorry, Senator Greenhagen, please go ahead.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, thanks for your presentation. My question is, the only time I've been involved with this, really, I was on the school board. We had a comparable worth study when we merged two school districts together. And needless to say, it had quite a few bumps in it, to put it mildly, okay? But, okay, so where do you get your standard of misclassification that you reference when you go into an employer? There's a lot of different employers. So where, you said there's if I understood the testimony properly, it's already in law, and now we're finally implementing it. Is there standards in law or statute that you reference, like in a healthcare system or, in a canning company, or how do you do that?
Commissioner?
Chair McEwen and Senator, so the employment classification tests have existed since, I think, any time we've attached anything to employment, whether it's safety net programs or, wage and hour laws. And those tests are slightly different depending on what thing we're looking at. So whether or not somebody is entitled to minimum wage and overtime is an employment test that is a combination of the unemployment insurance test as well as the workers' compensation test. And the unemployment insurance test exists for that classification determination. Revenue, as Director Getchell stated, is based on the common law IRS test. So the tests can differ depending on what you're looking at, like what agency or area of law you're under, as well as what industry, because the construction test is different than other industries as well.
Senator Fowler?
Oh, thank you. Thanks for that response. So if an employer, if you consider them to be in violation after applying those tests, does he have an appeal process, or do you give him warning first, or what kind of steps do you take?
Commissioner?
Chair McEwen and Senator, yes, there is always there is a due process provided. If somebody is, for instance, receives a compliance order from the Department of Labor and Industry, they would have the ability to request a contested case hearing. That contested case hearing would happen at the at the Office of Administrative Hearings. The administrative law judge would issue a recommendation. That can also be appealed to the Court of Appeals and all the way up to the Minnesota Supreme Court.
Senator?
Thank you for that response. Yeah, Madam Chair, are we going to ever have some public response on this law down the road sometime, a meeting, where businesses that have been affected by this can have a voice, or employees who've been affected by this? I guess it'd be nice to hear how it's going with the public.
Thank you, Senator, for that inquiry. This is our discussion this year has, we've had a lot of talk about doing this presentation to hear about how this collaboration is going. And we're always looking for good informational hearings to have in the Labor Committee in the Senate. So thanks for suggesting that topic. Obviously, if we have other legislation coming forward, that's also another opportunity for both workers and business people to come and tell us about how things are going for them. But we can add that to our list for informational hearing topics as well. Thank you for that. I just very briefly, I just wanted, again, to reiterate my thanks. I know that we want to move on, but I want to just say how shocking it is to me that almost 10% of Minnesota's private sector workers were misclassified in 2019. And then when we think about the amount of money then that is not in the pockets of those people, those working Minnesotans, that's a huge amount of income lost to Minnesotans. And sometimes I'm glad that you all took time at the beginning of the report to really lay out the impact on working people and those numbers. The billions in compensation that workers are losing out on in terms of paid leave, overtime pay, health insurance, retirement. We talked about the state tax revenue that's lost, of course. And also that like about 1 in 4 construction workers in Minnesota were misclassified. That is just outrageous. That's an outrageous theft of wages. And one of the things that I've always thought when we talk about misclassification, I feel like it's one of those sort of terms of art, wonky terms that those of us who work in this area, we know what that is, we know what it means. It's a kind of wage theft from people. But I almost want to call it what it is, which is theft from people. And we know that there are those cases of misunderstanding where somebody may not really quite get that they have to be employing someone properly as an employee rather than bringing them in as an independent contractor. But those cases where those bad actors are being identified, or those areas of our economy that have developed practices really of doing this to people. I think that this is probably one of the most valuable pieces of the work that you're doing that I'm seeing is that you're starting to be able to really identify the patterns and where the problems truly are so that we can really get to those and that education piece to make sure that people understand their rights and that businesses also understand their obligations to Minnesotans who are doing that labor with them and for them. So thank you so much for the work that you're doing. We look forward to the ongoing reports on how this work goes and know that we're here for you and let us know what you need. Thank you very much. Next up on our agenda today, we do have an informational hearing on apprenticeships, registered apprenticeship here in Minnesota. And first up testifying, we have Aaron Larson, the Director of Apprenticeships with the Department of Labor and Industry. Welcome. If you'd please identify yourself, and then we look forward to your testimony.
Thank you, Chair McEwen and members of the committee. My name is Aaron Larson. I direct the Apprenticeship Division at the Minnesota Department of Labor and Industry. Thank you for the opportunity to share a little bit about Apprenticeship Minnesota today. So just to start, just giving you a high-level overview of registered apprenticeship in general. Any registered apprenticeship program that our office approves will include 5 components. First, it'll start with employment. The apprentice is employed from day one of their experience, earning a wage and contributing to their employer. While they're working, they're receiving on-the-job training for their particular occupation under the guidance of a mentor or a journey worker. And they're also, during that time, receiving related instruction or classroom work that supports that on-the-job learning. During that time as well, apprentices will receive an progressive wage increase. So as their skills gain, they also receive an increase in their wages. At a minimum, there'll be a beginning, middle, and ending wage. And at the end of their apprenticeship, they will leave with a nationally recognized credential specific to their occupation. So an electrician leaving their program in Minnesota will be able to, that's transferable to other states and recognized there. Just to clarify a little bit also, you often hear the term registered versus just plain apprenticeship. And so to call out, really with those non-apprenticeship program, non-registered programs, they're not necessarily vetted by a third-party agency, which is the role that our Apprenticeship Minnesota at the Department of Labor provides. They may or may not include those 5 components I just described within the apprenticeship program and have some variations in terms of the training that they're offering. And one of the things that's probably most notable is they're typically not benefits eligible. So we often will receive phone calls from veterans who are looking to receive their veterans benefits because they believe they were in a registered apprenticeship program, but then to find out that the program hasn't been registered and they can't receive those benefits. I also wanted to just provide a brief highlight of how our state apprenticeship system fits into the national apprenticeship system. The U.S. Department of Labor administers apprenticeship through a two-pronged approach. There are some states that are administered by the Office of Apprenticeship. At USDOL, you'll see those represented in aqua on the map, and our neighbors to the west. Those have federal employees within the state who are approving apprenticeship programs. Then there are also what are called state apprenticeship agencies. In those instances, the USDOL has deputized the state to administer their own statewide apprenticeship program, and Minnesota is a state apprenticeship agency. So you'll see Iowa, Wisconsin, our surrounding states there are also state apprenticeship agencies. This allows us to have Minnesota-specific state statutes and to have state employees within the state who are closer to the work, reviewing, vetting, making sure programs are following state and federal laws. So to that end, just kind of a little bit more about our function at the Department of Labor. First and foremost, we serve as the regulatory body for registered apprenticeship. Sometimes folks will think that we are administering the apprenticeship program or providing training, but that is actually within the apprenticeship programs. So we work with employers to develop and register new programs to ensure that they meet all of the requirements for a program, and then we conduct annual compliance reviews to ensure that they're continuing to deliver the training that they promise to do so through their program. Additionally, we also provide a lot of education and support to existing programs to make sure that they have opportunities to expand their program or connect with grants within our office. We also do a number of outreach events to both prospective apprentices and employers across the state. Just to highlight some of the activities that we do quite often or focus our efforts on, we have spent quite a bit of time looking to find ways to develop registered apprenticeship programs in new industries. Over the past year, we've registered programs in early childhood education and teacher apprenticeships. We also have continued to receive interest from manufacturing programs, agriculture programs. We recently registered a meat cutting program. Additionally, we also find ways to support our current programs with disseminating best practices and providing ways to expand access to programs. And additionally, we're working closely with DEED and the Minnesota Department of Education to make sure we're coordinating efforts where there's overlap in our services. A quick snapshot of apprentices in Minnesota. On most any given day, there are about 11,000 apprentices in the state. I just pulled this number quickly before I came. That makes sense matching up with construction season hasn't started yet, so typically we see more of an uptick there. If you want to go to the next one. That breakout of apprentices, usually we have around 25 to 26% of our apprentices are people of color, 8% are women, and roughly 5% are veterans. And just to highlight those that are completing programs, last year, for calendar year 2024, we had nearly 1,900 apprentices who completed their program and roughly 4,000 who registered into a new program. Just a quick highlight also of the breakout of programs across industries. Many smaller cities across the state have municipal utility programs, so you'll see that there's a large number of those. Construction, we have 62 programs, 30 in manufacturing, 10 in healthcare. We've recently added a number of surgical technicians and medical assistants. The public sector, that's where you'll find the early childhood education and teacher apprenticeships. Transportation includes things like coach operators at Metro Transit. Agriculture, we have a number of arborist programs. Information technology, a lot of those are related to social media marketing. And then we just registered our first hospitality program in a long time as a pastry chef. So it's exciting to have that expansion. Seeing the breakout of how apprentices shake out across programs, roughly 9,500 of those 11,000 apprentices are in the construction industry. And you can see how they are spread across from there as well. In your deck with you, you have a number of success stories that you can take a look at. Just in the interest of time, I'll skip over some of these, but maybe you could go to the last one with the pass rates. Just to highlight some of the demonstrated success that we've had with registered apprenticeships. So we take our completed apprenticeship data and cross-check it against our licensure exam rates at the department for high-pressure piping, electricians, and plumbers. And just using the electricians as an example, you can see for the overall pass rate for electricians on their exam for apprentices is 94% compared to the non-apprentice pass rate at 76%. You can also see the first attempt on that exam really has a significant gap as well. So we're excited about some of that demonstrated success. So with that, I will close my remarks. Thank you for the opportunity to share that, and happy to entertain any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And members, I think we're going to just wait because we have a list of testifiers. I'd like to get through them all, and then hopefully we have just a little bit of time for questions if you're able to stick around. We'd appreciate it. Next, we have Dr. Michael Favor, followed by John Kornstrom. If you would both just make your way on up, and then we can keep moving along here. If you'd please introduce yourself for the record to the committee, and then proceed with your testimony. Thank you for being with us today.
Madam Chair, committee members, my name is Dr. Michael Favor. I'm the superintendent at Intermediate School District 917.
And good afternoon, Chair McEwen and committee members. My name is Leah Ward. I am the apprenticeship coordinator at ISD 917.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, honorable committee members. I'm John Kornstrom. I am the Chief Executive Officer of the Sheet Metal Air Conditioning and Roofing Contractors Association.
Welcome. And Mr. Favor, if you'd like to launch us off here with your testimony, that would be wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My testimony will be brief, hopefully clear and concise. What you're seeing in front of you now is 22 members of our apprentice program. Our apprentice program involves Intermediate School Districts 917, Intermediate School District 287, Intermediate School District 288, Intermediate School District 916. We partner with Brightworks and Minnesota State University Mankato, and we work together to build a cohort of apprentice teachers. We are the first teacher-apprentice program in the state of Minnesota. Very proud of that. Our specialty is special education. That's our focus in a high-need community of teachers.
And we just want to share with you the why apprenticeship. The goal with apprenticeship in the teacher apprenticeship program is to increase the amount of highly qualified special educators in the state of Minnesota. It provides an opportunity for paraprofessionals who are committed to special education in obtaining their teaching licensure. And one of the biggest goals here is to redefine and enhance the student teaching experience to support retention. The retention rates within recruitment and retention rates, especially in our intermediate districts, I tend to continue to be a struggle. And with that then is the hope is to create a sustainable pathway that addresses some of the barriers that exist for licensure. And so we are very proud to be able to be within this first registered apprenticeship program. And thank you for hearing our testimony today.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your testimony very much.
Once again, thank you for allowing us to be here. And if there are any questions,
Very good. Are you able to stick around just for a little bit longer? And if there are follow-up questions, we'll certainly have a little space at the end for our members to have some dialogue.
thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Kornstrom?
Thank you, Madam Chair and committee members. SMARCA, Sheet Metal Air Conditioning Roofing Contractors, we are a trade association and also provide labor relations assistance for approximately 200 Minnesota-based construction employers. We also have members in North and South Dakota in addition to that. I have been with SMARCA since 1998. And I was introduced to apprenticeship programs at that time. I serve as a trustee on multiple joint apprenticeship programs in both Minnesota and the Dakotas. We are also a sponsor and appointing authority for some of those programs. The trades that we work with in Minnesota, it is sheet metal and roofing. And then in the Dakotas, we do sheet metal and some piping, plumbers and pipe fitters. I asked to be here today to proclaim that Minnesota registered apprenticeship system works great, and it is very good for our employers. Apprentices learn a skilled trade, including an emphasis on safety. They're held accountable and have a well-defined path to success if they choose to follow it. And that path leads to a successful career in construction trades. An effective apprenticeship program is important to the success of our construction employers as well as their employees. Construction employment is often transient in that you may be employed by one employer this year, and then the next year a different employer has more of the work that's out there and more of a labor need. And so it all depends upon who has the work, who has the labor need. That's where the employees end up working. Our registered apprenticeship programs train skills for an occupation and not just skills for one particular employer. So upon completion of apprenticeship, the apprentices have the ability to have skills across the occupation, and they can work for multiple construction employers. That is good for the employers because there's a workforce available. It's good for the employees because they have multiple places to seek employment. A well-trained workforce allows for successful construction of buildings in our case, and that is both whether they are publicly owned or private entities. A number of years ago, Governor Ventura pushed for getting rid of state control of apprenticeship programs and deferring to the federal government as overseeing our programs. And we should all be grateful that that did not happen. As a trustee on apprenticeship programs in North and South Dakota, as well as Minnesota, I can tell you in the Dakotas, we never see the Chicago-based regulators. In Minnesota, that's not the case. The reduced oversight in the Dakotas does not benefit the employers. It does not benefit the employees. The Minnesota Department of Labor and Industry forces us to be accountable, conducts regular audits to make sure that we're doing what we're supposed to be doing, ensures our program teach relevant trade skills and safety, and more importantly, it ensures that apprentices advance and actually graduate from these programs. For all of these reasons, our contractors, we support the current registered apprenticeship model, and we support the incentives that are in place to employ apprentices on public construction jobs. So I really am here today to thank you for taking the time to learn more about the apprenticeship program and the incentives that you've put in place for our contractors to employ registered apprentices.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Next, we have Tom Alsheim, followed by Sophie Thadden, and then Travis Rust, if people want to come on up. And again, if you'd please introduce yourself for the record, and we look forward to your testimony. We can just go one at a time, too, if you just introduce yourself and then proceed with your testimony, and then we can go to the next person.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and Committee. Thank you for having us today. So I am Tom Alsheim, Director of Technical Education at the Finishing Trades Institute of the Upper Midwest. We are an apprenticeship for the Painters Union, but we have 6 different trades that come to our school. We have painters, drywall finishers, glazers, glass workers, sign installers, and we have commercial applicator specialists, which would be the bridge painters, water towers, and stuff like that. So we are a 3-year apprenticeship program. All of our students have the opportunity to go through their 3 years of apprenticeship, which is 6,000 hours of on-the-job training with 432 hours of classroom training. So they get a lot of time out in the field with their contractors. If they complete their apprenticeship with their 6,000 hours, they're able to at the same time take 5 additional classes at the school because we are a registered college through the Council of Occupational Education, so they can achieve their associate's degree in construction technologies. Because we went through all of the hurdles to become a registered college, we also have a high school program. So we take an individual that wants to come the last 1 or 2 years of high school all the way through their apprenticeship to an associate's degree. So we have a registered CTE instructor, specializes in special ed education, and he does a fabulous job working with a lot of individuals that we've identified that probably would not finish their high school career unless they have different opportunities. So this gives an individual the chance to learn about math and a lot of other programs that they wouldn't follow through with in the high school program. So we're a little bit unique compared to some of the other apprenticeship programs, but we're very proud of the pathway that we have to get from high school all the way through the college atmosphere. So with that, I'll take questions later and I'll pass it on.
Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, I'm Sophie Thadden with the Minnesota Mechanical Contractors Association. And at MMCA, we represent 130 contractors who specialize in the installation and maintenance of plumbing, heating, and cooling systems. Our members range from small businesses with just a few employees to large companies with hundreds. They take on projects of all sizes, from installing water heaters in homes and process piping at refineries. Collectively, MMCA members employ over 6,000 skilled workers and generate more than $500 million in construction business annually. Each year, more than $10 million are invested in training apprentices and journey workers. MMCA is an employer sponsor of 6 apprenticeship committees across the state with over 1,200 apprentices, all privately funded by the industry. Additionally, I serve on the Minnesota Department of Labor and Industries Apprenticeship Advisory Council and the Minneapolis Plumbers Joint Journeyman Apprenticeship Training Committee. Registered apprenticeship is the foundation of a highly skilled workforce. Through structured hands-on training, we ensure that the next generation of tradespeople are fully prepared to meet the highest industry standards. These programs go beyond simply filling jobs. They're about strategically preparing our workforce to meet evolving demands of the industry. Labor and management work together to define the skills, development, and direction needed to shape the future of the industry. This partnership ensures that our workforce is not only highly skilled, but also adaptable to advancements in technology and industry shifts. Registered apprenticeship is more than just training. It's a proven system that builds a pipeline of skilled professionals, strengthens the industry, and ensures long-term success for both workers and employers. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you, Chair McEwen and committee members, for giving me this opportunity to testify before you today. I'm going to get a little bit personal I'm going to tell a little bit of my story to begin with. Don't worry, I'll be less than 4 minutes, hopefully. To begin, my name is Travis Rust. I am an IBW 292 electrician and instructor at the Minneapolis Electrical Joint Apprenticeship Training Center, also referred to as the JTC as I go through my testimony here. Upon graduating from high school in 1998, I joined the United States Marine Corps and served honorably until my untimely discharge in 2001. When I was involved in a near-death accident while traveling to another base that left me unconscious for about 12 hours. I suffered a traumatic brain injury and swelling and bleeding of the brain, fractured skull, and a broken pelvis. Spent 9 months of physical therapy from a wheelchair to a walker to crutches and a cane. When I was eventually medically discharged, I decided to come back home to Minnesota. Kind of lost when I got home. It took me till about 2006. I earned an associate's degree in electrical construction from Dunwoody College of Technology here over in Minneapolis. I was then accepted into the 292 Minneapolis Electrical JTC. Finding a job that had a pension, great health care, wages, and a top-notch structured apprenticeship program was everything I could imagine. Our structured apprenticeship program is 5 years long. Each year consists of 30 weeks and 240 hours of classroom training. An apprentice must pass their respective year of classroom training and reach a certain number of hours worked on the job to get their next pay raise and continue to the next year. Not only do our apprentices receive training, but all of our instructors have to go to training in Ann Arbor every year, and we receive professional education training. Upon graduation, 95% of our apprentices pass the state journey worker exam on their first try, while the percentage of people passing the state journey worker exam overall is only about 38%, like you saw earlier. Our apprentices receive extensive electrical code and OSHA training, while also becoming first aid, CPR, and AED certified. Every apprentice has to get that certification every single year. I'm proud to say that I've completed the 5 years of apprenticeship, earned both my journey worker and master electrician license through the JTC. The excellent continuing education at the Minneapolis JTC is made possible not only for me, but for thousands of our members over the years. I worked in the field for 13 years before applying to teach full-time at the JTC. This would prove to be yet another important moment in my life and one that would impact IBW and fellow veterans across the country. During my first few months of teaching, an apprentice who was an Afghanistan war veteran took his own life. This brought back some dark memories of 2 Marines I served with who also took their own lives. Sorry. One suicide that I witnessed continues to have a profound effect on me to this day. All right. I decided to speak in front of all the apprentices and offer my time and classroom to any veteran after school who wanted to talk to someone. Sorry. Soon we had a large group started, and we began to collaborate in creating a committee in our union where veterans can talk about things like veterans benefits, mental health, or even family issues. After a few months, the International office heard about our movement and decided it was time to make this a veterans committee a reality for all veterans working in our local unions across the United States and Canada. So yes, the committee that was started in Minneapolis by just a few of us had grown to international status in the IBW. The veterans serving in this committee have also helped create VEEP. Not sure if anybody's heard of it here. It's a skill bridge program, and we have a partnership between the IBW and the Department of Justice. This program trains service members during their last 6 months of active duty, and it gives them the opportunity to join an electrical apprenticeship program in the home area that they'll be moving back to after they're discharged. This has helped numerous lives for our service members who are being discharged from the military. Oftentimes, you find yourself kind of floating around not knowing what to do with your life, and the structure that is provided by the union and the camaraderie and the apprenticeship and all together has helped many lives. The Minneapolis Electrical JTC has trained those who wired skyscrapers we see downtown, wired the stadiums and arenas that we watch our favorite teams play in, and trained those that build the hospitals that our children are born in. This training facility has been and will continue to be one of the best electrical training programs in the state and will hold its own compared to any others around the country. And I thank you for your time. Thanks.
Thank you very much for your testimony, for sharing with us. We have 3 testifiers left, and then hopefully we'll have a few minutes for some discussion. Trevor Ogilvie, Barb Pex, and Justin, is it Rost? Rost? Welcome to the Senate Labor Committee. Mr. Ogilvie, if you'd go ahead and kick us off here.
Thank you, Madam Chair and fellow committee members. My name is Trevor Ogilvie, former apprentice for the United Association of Plumbers and Gas Fitters Local 15, now the training director. I'm here today to discuss an overview of our program. Year-round, we offer on-site and off-site training for apprenticeship education, program promotion, and recruitment. Our program offers opportunity to workers that are seeking education while developing skills to remain gainfully employed for a long-lasting career. Veterans Affairs benefits are available to our eligible apprentices. Our apprenticeship program is 5 years long. All of our apprentices during this time receive CPR and first aid training annually. They also attend 42 individualized courses. 50% of their training is done in the classroom, and 50% of their training is done with hands-on, with the emphasis of code and safety. Our state-of-the-art labs mirror the current plumbing industry, and as the industry changes, so do our labs. Every graduate from our program obtains both their state of Minnesota plumbing license and their city of Minneapolis plumber gas fitter license. Their education continues after that, not only to maintain these licenses, but to obtain new licenses. We have a nationally certified ASSC backflow lab to ensure the protection of public drinking water. We are certified to teach and administer testing for NITC medical gas courses. We are solely funded through contributions of hours worked by our members. We have a team of instructors that bring an immense amount of value to our program. They work in the industry as installers, service techs, estimators, project managers, inspectors, and business owners, and come down and help teach our apprentices in the evenings after working their full-time jobs all day. I'm inviting everyone here to our training center for a tour to come see the excellent opportunity we are offering. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony.
Madam Chair, committee members, thank you for letting me be here. My name is Barb Pex, and I am here, I think I get to encapsulate a lot of this. So my title says I am retired, right? So I'm going to tell you my story because I come to you first from a pre-employment program, which was funded through a grant from the state of Minnesota, right? I came through that program, and it gave me an opportunity to decide that construction was what I wanted to do. And so I'm going to advocate that you continue to support those programs because underrepresented individuals get an opportunity through those programs to do some exploration and find out if this is what they want to do, right? And then I didn't enter into an apprenticeship right away. I actually was working as a maintenance carpenter. And I loved the job. I was working part-time. I was working $10 an hour. I thought I was fine. I had another job. And the people I was working with knew I had an opportunity to go to work for a union contractor. And they pulled me aside and they said, get out, go do this. And I wish I could go back 26 years and thank them because I'm retired now, right? I have had 26 years as a carpenter, good wages, good benefits, good training through my program. For the last 16 years, I've had the opportunity to represent other carpenters, other tradespeople under our collective bargaining agreement. right? Previously, under the testimony you saw, 22% of construction workers are misclassified. I have never been misclassified as a construction worker, right? The benefit of a collective bargaining agreement, right? I encapsulate that. This whole meeting, I encapsulate, right? Apprentice programs, wonderful opportunities. I went to the training center, I got my hands-on experience, I had the opportunity to work for a contractor that had women that worked for them, which was wonderful because I had an opportunity to be mentored by women. One of the things that I am involved with is Sisters in the Brotherhood, and we've actually changed our name to Siblings in the Brotherhood because we have male advocates for ourselves as well. So we refer to ourselves as SIBs, right? Having someone that mentors you and advocates for you and supports you in this trade when you are 4% of people working in the industry with the tools is very important. So that's what Sisters in the Brotherhood does, is it's an affinity group that does that. I've been very involved in that. We've had a group here in the city since 2002. We also have an all trades group for all union women construction workers called Women Building Success, which does the same thing. So I would say this. I'm where I'm at because of apprenticeship programs and pre-employment programs. And so continue coming to visit, continue supporting those programs, and continue making people like me that are very happy as retirees. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, my name is Justin Rost. You may know me as the director of the Minnesota Helmets to Hard Hats program. So although I do get to hear so many success stories of veterans that I work with that get into the registered apprenticeship programs inside of the state of Minnesota, I'm here actually to talk about my own journey. I'm a Marine veteran. I was in Marine infantry with 3rd Battalion, 3rd Marines in Hawaii, tough duty station. However, my time there, I had a mission. I had a place to be. I had a structured environment to work through. I was able to marry the love of my life and have my first child in Hawaii in the Marine Corps and be supported and taken care of while I continued to do the mission of the United States Marine Corps. It was when I got out that I found that there were things missing. I came home to a life where all of a sudden there was a lot of uncertainty. Being an infantry Marine, you do receive a lot of the soft skills employers are looking for, but you don't have the technical skill that many people are looking for. Being proficient in warfare is not necessarily looked upon highly as an employee when you get looking for a job in that atmosphere. So I spent quite a bit of time trying to figure out what to do. Burned up my GI Bill, going to school for things that would never support my family, finding my way into different industries that just didn't work out. There was no clear structure on how to handle it. It wasn't until I found my way into the Sheet Metal Workers Local 10 that I actually found some structure. They laid out a pathway for me that made it very clear what I needed to do to get to the next level, what I needed to do to be successful in my career. And I took to it. I took to it in a way I'd never imagined. The things that I experienced when I was in all that doubt is exactly what we were talking about earlier with Mr. Rust. The uncertainty leads to doubt, and that leads you down a path of mental health problems. We see it all the time, especially in the role I serve now under Helmets to Hard Hats. We see this quite a bit, that economic uncertainty leads down that path. And I was no different. I was very, very distraught. Didn't know how I was going to take care of my wife and young child. It wasn't until I got into sheet metal, I received a livable wage, and then I knew how many hours I had to work. I knew what classes I had to be at. I had a mission and I had organization and structure. Not to mention that being out on the job site was a lot like being back in the military. I had camaraderie. We had a goal. We were working hard every single day to make sure that goal got accomplished. I was very fortunate to be on the Capitol project, where the entire roof of the Capitol got redone. I was on that project. I put pieces of metal on that project. It's something that I can come by here every time and I can see and be proud of. I'm also proud to say that The livable wage that I earned, along with the benefits, allowed me to have another child, and my oldest child, who was born before I got into sheet metal, that I was concerned for whether I'd be able to take care of, is a successful adult who just returned from the United States Air Force. So she continues the legacy of serving our country and then serving our community. And now she is also becoming a sheet metal worker. So this is not something that can be successful one time. It can breed generations of success. I am not the first sheet metal worker in my family. My father and brother were both sheet metal workers, both of which did very well. My father is retired, living very well. He moved out of the state, but he is living very well. And I think the pathways that we're talking about here, it can't be understated just how important they are to the individuals who come into them. Being protected like the military did for me, giving me purpose, showing me a pathway, guaranteeing me a protected wage and medical and dental benefits that have allowed me to raise my children, pursue the American dream, and then continue in my current position to be able to help other veterans get there as well. So I want to thank you for allowing us to be here.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Thank you. That concludes our list of testifiers. I want to thank each and every one of you for your very moving testimony and for coming here and taking time out of your busy lives and days to share with us your personal stories and your professional journeys to where you are now. I'm going to open it up to any comments or questions that our committee members may have, and then I have some closing remarks as well. Senator Umer Verbaeten.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just thank you all for sharing your stories today. I know many of you are so excited to see you in the room. And apprenticeship programs are just an amazing opportunity for people to earn while they're learning and to really be able to provide for their families, as you shared. So very supportive. I wish more of our colleagues were here to share hear these stories that you've shared with us today. But thank you for being here and for taking the time. Thanks for providing this complex that we're all able to be in today as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Senator. And I will note today, I know we do have a number of colleagues, there's a lot happening at the Capitol right now who were not able to be here, but our hearing today is recorded and we'll be posting it on our official site, and it's also available on YouTube, so if there are people who want to go back and look at it, it is available and we're happy to share that. Senator Pappas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've had the privilege of touring many apprenticeship sites and really applaud the work that you all do. I think it's really important, and we end up with such highly trained workers in the fields that we all represent, and that's just really important to the state. So thank you.
Senator Marty.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just add one thing. I'm sorry I was late for the committee because of other things as well, but need an upbeat day, and this is a real boost to see. I mean, the apprenticeship programs, the ones I've toured and so on, are always amazing. And taking people who are sometimes struggling to figure out where they want to be in life and how they want to pull things together and giving them the training in an affordable way where they get paid while they're going to school rather than the other way around. And giving them good wage jobs that are safe and quality building and everything. So thanks. This was just an upbeat thing to stop in here and catch the end of it. So thank you.
Thank you, Senator Marty. And I would also just say that I'm hearing a lot. I represent the Senate District 8, which is the city of Duluth, and we are talking more and more about making sure, I know in our district, that we have those avenues for young people or, people who are making maybe a transition in career and really want to look at the trades or look at different career possibilities through apprenticeship programs, whether it's teaching or the various apprenticeships that we heard about today. We're really wanting to foster that and to make sure that people are connected to those and can really see those opportunities. Because that, again, what we've heard about that support piece that's there, a lot of time that really is missing. And a lot of times people also just aren't learning about these opportunities that are there. They somehow get lucky, they hear about it from a friend or a buddy or maybe family connection that links them in. But I have so many friends also who said, gosh, how come I didn't hear about these things in high school? This is what I should have done. Like, I struggled years, maybe got an education that wasn't really the right fit for me personally. I'd been told to do a 4-year degree or something, and instead I should have become a welder, or I should have done all these other things. So I just want to thank all of you for the work that you've done in trying to make sure that people do know about these supportive, wonderful programs and quality programs supported by us together as the people of Minnesota, getting these supported and launched and making sure the standards are where we all want them to be for each other, and then making sure people know about those opportunities. So thank you, everyone, so much. We really, really appreciate the time that you've taken today to share your personal stories, and we'll take those with us as we move forward. Thank you very much. Members, the Senate Labor Committee today is adjourned.